My name is Shanti Thakur, and I'm a filmmaker. And I'm also a professor in the MFA program in Integrated Media Arts at Hunter College. This year, it was across the board. LGBT issues, racism, story about a boy who was a bipolar psychotic, suicide, all the light-hearted fares. And then there's some also just very charming films in animation. These are a few that are just coming to mind right now. I think the strongest pieces were those where the young artists weren't making pieces that were derivative of other films that we've seen. We were, talking about finding a person's voice is so abstract, but the strongest pieces are always clear that the personal stories, their personal themes, their personal questions translate into a film.
My name is Samdperil. I am the creative director of United Photo Industries. Recently become a non-for-profit. We focus on education, but primarily on increasing sort of access to photography to wider audiences. So I think my best advice would be photograph what you know. Tell your story. Don't try and tell someone else's story, because ultimately it's going to be more honest, it's going to be more direct, and you're going to have more to say that's going to feel strong and honest and deep than if you walk into another person's community, whether another country, another city, and document. Because you don't have the familiarity, you're new, you're still understanding, you're still learning it, so it reads that way. You want to kind of push them to think about everything, think about the lighting, think about the composition, think about the topic, and not worry so much, is this the best camera, is this the best lighting, focus on what you have. I mean, I've seen amazing photos being done with, using a piece of foam board as a bounce card. You don't need the best equipment, you don't need the best, sort of like classroom. If you can figure out what do I want to say and why will someone listen, and as long as you can tell an interesting story or photograph, the rest almost falls aside.
My name's Karen Schiff. I make drawings, and I also teach in various colleges, often having to do with writing as well as making art. And this is my first time on the jury for drawing and illustration. There were some drawings that made us as jurors laugh out loud. There are some that made us sit back and say, wow. And there are a lot of times when we would ask to have parts of a drawing blown up so that we could see more closely what was going on in a particular piece. Sometimes that was so that we could judge when we were on the fence about something, but sometimes it was just because we were amazed by what we were thinking we were seeing, but we weren't sure. What else was surprising was when something had a sort of fresh vision. I'm thinking of one where there were fish flying through the sky, and hanging from the fish were lines. And the lines, it was like parachute lines. At the bottom of all the lines were heads of people in different expressions for each fish. So it was just like, what is happening here? And yet it was, it sort of made sense as a vision. It was a total vision. So, yeah, there's representational drawing, but these were representational fish and heads. And yet it was a very odd scene that we all found compelling. A lot of skulls, a lot of butterflies, a lot of portraits from unusual angles. We started to wonder if selfies had played a part in that. Not just selfies, but using cell phones, like holding them in unusual angles so that you could get a new perspective on a scene. Portraits of people with unusual expressions on their faces. That seemed to be popular. And dogs and cats.
My name is Monica Marino, and I am the manager of academic and school programs at the Brooklyn Museum. There seem to be a number of works across different media that were exploring the idea of gender identity. So there were a number of videos that did that, but there were also some photographs that did that and some drawings. And I was really interested to see that happening across media.
Okay, I'm Dred Scott. I make revolutionary art to propel history forward. By that I mean I make a lot of work that helps an audience confront a lot of the cohering and values of American society and imagine how the world could be radically different and far better. So I work in video and performance and installation and sculpture and photography, but it's all about having an audience, re-examine the world that we live in. Well, in judging the future new, I mean, I had a sense that there would be work that didn't fit into easy boxes of, oh, this is painting or this is sculpture, this is photography, and that was true. I mean, there were artists who were young artists who were, some of them had clearly been working in more performance-based or installation-based work for a while. Others that were just trying to figure out, well, I like this art thing and I'm not sure what I'm doing, but I don't want to do traditional stuff and I'm trying to do new stuff. Sometimes it was not so successful, other times it was really successful. When we got down to selecting the ones that we gave awards to, there was really good work. We were fighting at the end that we had to eliminate some people, and we were like, no, we don't want to, because some of this work is really good. And it was a good sort of section of work that in a way actually reflected a lot of what's going on in contemporary art right now. Actually, there was one work that used a GoPro, and it wasn't about the GoPro, but that's something that's very much what sort of all people, but a lot of younger people are actually, it's how they're experiencing the world, and the art they're making is somewhat reflecting that. And so for this, I assume, young woman, that was just a piece of technology she had around, but then when she went to make the art, it actually used that technology as part of telling the story. As very much a point of view. We were actually very happy, just like, oh, this is what a younger generation is, taking the tools we handed them and using them in new ways.
Bullying. 8 letters, 1 word. It's that one word we're always told not to do, but how do we know what not to do when half of us don't truly know what bullying is? So, what is bullying? Bullying can be indirect, emotional, verbal, physical, cyber, and social. Unfortunately, the list goes on. Bullying is a personal attack that continues for a prolonged amount of time. Usually, what comes to mind when we hear the word bullying is physical bullying, which is punching, beating someone up, pushing them in the hallways. But bullying can also be as small and unnoticeable as gossiping about that one girl you and your friends don't like. But even though it's wrong, why do we still do it? Because she's different? Because she wears weird clothing or isn't like you? Because he was nerdy and he enjoyed learning and spent his weekends at the library.
Ready? Race is that thing when I look at your face. Race is that box that I check in the place. Race is that common ground that we all try to replace. But if you said a color that didn't seem as if, then I'd make her wear face. But if I looked at you and tried to assume what you could be, then I figured out I'd be trying to find the misconceptions in your ethnicity. But then somehow we try to make this big family tree where ethnicity and race become two things that agree. Don't get me wrong, these two things come hand in hand. But as a whole, we're still figuring out some things we just don't understand.